Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit, when it talks about the Yaakov's history, and I wanted to devote a few minutes to discuss her. It's Serach bat Asher. You've heard of Serach?
400-year-old.
Yeah, maybe more. So Serach was the daughter of Asher, right? One of the 12 sons of Jacob, one of the 12 sons of Yaakov is Asher. Asher had a daughter named Serach. Now, why is she so noteworthy? Because in the end of Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit, when it talks about the Yaakov's family, the 70 people of Yaakov's family that moved to Egypt, it's all a bunch of men, right? It's the 12 sons. It's Yaakov, his 12 sons, and all of their sons, and Serach bat Asher. So there's obviously something remarkable about her that she is specifically mentioned by name. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is that at the end of the Torah, in Bamidbar, after they've already come out of Egypt, hundreds of years later, who is mentioned again in the census among the children of Asher? And Serach bat Asher is there too, which is wild because this is an event separated by at least 210 years, which means Serach was there coming into Egypt, and she was also there at the Exodus coming out of Egypt. So what is her story? The Torah doesn't actually say more about her other than mentioning her in two very important lists. So she's clearly very important, but who is she? So for that you need the oral tradition. And what does the oral tradition say about Serach? Exactly. So Yaakov, when the sons wanted to tell Yaakov that Yosef is still alive in Egypt, they thought that, rightly, that if they just tell him the news, he would probably have a heart attack, right? He'd collapse from the shock. What do you mean he's alive? All these years, we thought he's dead. I've been saying Kaddish, whatever it is, and now you're telling me he's alive? So what did they do? They had Serach, who was this musician and had a good voice. They had Serach compose a song and sing it to him to calm him down, to put him into the right spirit, and then she broke the news. So she wrote a rhyme, she wrote a poem. The refrain is that, Od Yosef Chai b'Mitzrayim, and then she rhymed that with, and he has sons, Menashe and Ephraim. So it rhymes, Mitzrayim and Ephraim rhyme. That was the chorus. And so she sang that song to him, and the music put him into the right spirit, and then she told him the news. And so he was so happy that he blessed her, and she was blessed to live for many centuries. That's why she had such an exceptionally long life, that she actually merited also to come out of Egypt and lived presumably for many more centuries after that. According to one tradition, she lived for 1,000 years and died around the time of the Assyrian exile, when the first group of Israelites came to Isfahan and would have been buried there. Or she lived even longer, and the Iranian community in Isfahan believes that she lived there until the 12th or 13th century. And she was alive all the way up to that time, and then she was buried, and you can visit the tomb. Well, you can't, but theoretically, you could. A person could visit the tomb of Serach bat Asher in Isfahan.
I just made a connection with the 70, because she, as you said, the 70 nations that went in, and now the Star of Jacob, it's going to be around for 70 days.
There's a lot of 70s. Gog Magog is 70, and there's a 70 times Lebanon's mentioned in Tanakh. You're going to see numbers, there's always number patterns everywhere. So the tradition is she lived 1,000 years, like Adam and Eve were meant to live 1,000 years. And she was buried in Isfahan, and that place was a pilgrimage site, and Jews always went there. And actually, the class that we were supposed to do tonight was about going to Kivrei Tzadikim, because after the last class, I had many, many emails and questions of are we allowed to go to Kivrei Tzadikim? Can we pray at the graves of Tzadikim? So I actually made a class for that. And then with the news, I had to change it and do this instead. So we'll do Kivrei Tzadikim, God willing, next time. Unless something else happens, and then we'll have to change the subject again. Yeah, probably. So Serach had very many important roles over her 1,000-year-plus life, because she was the one that identified the sarcophagus of Yosef in Egypt. Because remember, Yosef, before he passed away, made the Israelites promise to when you will eventually go back to Israel at the Exodus, he said, make sure you take me with you. Take my bones with you. Remember this? Yeah. So when it was time for the Exodus, and all the Jews were packed, the Israelites were packing, and what did Moshe do? It says the Israelites were packing, and Moshe went to look for the sarcophagus of Yosef. because they had to take it with him. But how would he know where to find it? So he had Serach. Serach knows because she was there. She was there at the funeral. So she was able to actually show Moshe where Yosef's sarcophagus was. She also helped King David. We don't have time to go into the story now, but in Sefer Shmuel, there's a story about a certain person called Sheva ben Bichri who tried to start a revolt against King David, and it ended up there was a little civil war. And then it says in Tanakh that there was a certain woman, Vatikra Isha Chachama min ha'ir. There was a certain wise lady, Isha Chachama, that came out and was able to bring peace and was able to get Sheva, arrest him, and bring his head on a platter to King David to end this revolution without harming the people, so that nobody would suffer from this civil war. So basically there was this Isha Chachama, this wise woman, who was able to end the civil war in the times of King David and Yoav. And that wise woman is identified as Serach. Who is the Isha Chachama in the story? That's Serach. So she's there as well. So you see her all over the place as this hidden character. And the Zohar says, and other sources as well, describes that now where is she? She has an academy, she has a yeshiva in heaven, and she teaches there. She's one of the great heavenly professors that's teaching the Neshamot in Gan Eden. There's a description of that in the Zohar. So it's a very significant person, Serach bat Asher. And the fact that it's Serach bat Asher, we're tying many different pieces together here. We have Isfahan and Iran, and we want to tie it back to Lebanon and what's going on in this war. The fact that she is the daughter of Asher is really significant. Because where was the territory of Asher?
Israel.
Right. The territory of Asher was in northern Israel. Where specifically?
Tyre.
Right where today, exactly. Tyre was in the territory of Asher. Asher's land was along the Mediterranean coast, what is today like southern Lebanon. And the city of Tzor, Tyre, was eventually part of the territory of Asher. If you read the story in Tanakh, King Solomon and King Hiram were really good friends, and it describes in Tanakh how they even exchanged cities. They exchanged territories. So King Solomon gave some Israelite towns to Hiram. They even intermarried because there's a few Hirams mentioned in Tanakh, and one of them he had a Jewish mother from the tribe, or an Israelite mother from the tribe of Dan. So you had a Lebanese Phoenician father and an Israelite mother. So there was even intermarriage between them. The two people were very close. The ancient Phoenicians and ancient Israel were very close. They used the same exact alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet and the Phoenician alphabet's identical. The language was almost identical. A fun fact, as a side story, you remember Carthage? Carthage in North Africa? You remember Rome and the Punic Wars? Before Rome's golden age, before the Roman Empire, before that, Rome had several wars with Carthage. They were fighting for control of the Mediterranean. Rome and Carthage. Carthage is in North Africa. I think what is today Tunisia. So Carthage and Rome were the two great cities of the Mediterranean. And then Rome ultimately won the Punic Wars. And the most glorious leader of Carthage was Hannibal. I don't know if you remember your high school history. But Carthage, we call it Carthage, but the actual name of Carthage is Karta Hadasha. Karta Hadasha means the new city. Like we just read here in the Zohar. Karta means city in Aramaic and in Old Hebrew. Karta Hadasha is Carthage. And Hannibal, his full name was Hannibal Barca. And there are those who say Barca is a descendant of Barak, who was from the tribe of Naphtali. Remember Dvorah and Barak? Deborah and Barak? Barak is one of the great heroes in Jewish history in the time of Judges from the tribe of Naphtali. And so there's a tradition that actually Hannibal Barca is a descendant of Barak, of this great Israelite hero, because Carthage was founded by Phoenician sailors who went across the Mediterranean and founded colonies all across the Mediterranean. Carthage was the Karta Hadasha, the new city of the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians sailed alongside the Israelites. They sailed together. It's described in Tanakh. They sailed to Ophir to bring gold. They sailed along the Mediterranean. So this is almost like one people, very close, the Phoenicians and the Israelites. So Asher is that territory of what is today southern Lebanon. And what's amazing is that both Yaakov on his deathbed and Moshe, before he passed away, they both gave blessings to the tribes. And both of them blessed Asher almost the same way, with the same key word. You remember what the key word is? What is Asher going to be blessed with? Everybody was blessed with something. Good. Oil. Right. Both of them mention oil. So Yaakov said, Me'asher shmena lachmo. Let his bread be oily. Shmena lach. He will have a lot of shemen. Ve'u yiten ma'adanei melech. And he'll have royal delicacies. Let him be rich with royal delicacies. And Moshe said, Ule'asher amar baruch mi banim asher. Iratzu yechav vetovel bashemen raglo. Let him dip his legs in oil. So, very strange. Both Yaakov and Moshe blessed Asher with having oil. Let him be rich with oil. And if you look today off the coast of Asher, off the coast of northern Israel and southern Lebanon, what do you see? In recent decades, they've discovered many, many oil and gas fields. Leviathan, Karish. That's also symbolic, Leviathan. Remember Leviathan? We talked about Leviathan as well. And Leviathan and the connection to Mashiach, who has to slay Leviathan at the end of days. So you have the Leviathan fields, you have the Karish fields, you have all these oil and gas fields. Ule'asher amar. That's what we read many times on the Simchat Torah, right? It's the Aliyah that gets over and over again. So of course, all the conspiracy theorists, I saw a bunch of, somebody sent me, that Israel went to war because it's all about oil, right? Every war is about oil. So they had to go into Lebanon to secure their oil and gas fields. Yeah, exactly. It's a side benefit to also reinforce Israel's control over the offshore riches. That God in the Torah promised Asher that this will be the land of Asher, off the coast of Asher. They will dip their feet in oil and they will become very rich from the oil and gas reserves off their coast. And Asher as well, by the way, the gematria of Asher is what? The numerical value, 501. And it's a very important word, a very important number, because when Moshe first met God at Mount Sinai, and he said, what is your name? How am I going to introduce you to the people? What did God say? He said, Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. So Asher is actually in God's name. It's one of the greatest names of God, one of the holiest names of God that was revealed to Moses at his first encounter on Mount Sinai with God was Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh, right? I will be what I will be. And if you look at the commentaries on that verse, what did God mean when he said that? He said, I will be with you now in this redemption, in this salvation out of Egypt, as I will be with you in the future final redemption at the end of days. There's going to be two great redemptions, the first and the final. The first with Moshe, the final with Mashiach. Eheyeh means I will be with you. I'm here with you now, and I will be with you now, and I will be with you again in the end of days. So Asher is actually right there within God's name. Its numerical value is 501. And there's a lot of Kabbalistic significance to it. Maybe we'll do it another day in full. But the redemption out of Egypt in Kabbalistic sources, one of the angels that brought about the retribution upon Egypt was actually called Taka, Taf Kuf Aleph, which has a numerical value of 501. So even like the angel of destruction had this value of 501. And you see this number 501 everywhere. You know, on the Pesach Seder, we do this strange thing where you dip a drop of wine, you do like a few drops. So you do 10 drops for each plague, and then you do 3 more drops. What do you say with the extra 3 drops? Right, there were simanim datzah hadash be'achav. What is that? What is the point of that? Okay, so thank you. You've given us an acronym. Like, why is that? Why do we need to say the 10 plagues as an acronym? Who cares? So the gematria of that acronym, the Tzach Hadash Be'achav, is 501. So it's meant to remind you on a Kabbalistic level of the 501, the redemption out of Egypt, the angel of destruction, Taf Kuf Aleph. That's why that acronym is there. It's the 501. So it's also a very important number. I remember back in the Obama years, people used to say Obama is Gog, he must be Gog, and the proof is that the gematria of Barack Hussein Obama is 501. So people were saying, that's when you abuse Gematria sometimes and try to find things that, yeah, well, who knows. Also the Gematria of Ishmaelim, like we just said, Oale Edom ve'Ishmaelim. Ishmaelim is 501 because the whole Gog Magog conflict is instigated by Ishmaelim. And so that also happens to be
Obama is an Ishmaeli.
Hussein Obama. Yeah. I always found it ironic that right after deposing Saddam Hussein, the president of the United States was Barack Hussein Obama. I always found that, even as back in then, I thought, is that really? Did they just elect another Hussein after deposing a Hussein? Okay, so anyway, that's the 501. That's Serach Bat Asher. There's a lot of meaning there.